Oh, what happened? Oh, yeah.
That's one of the that goes down in the record books as one of the beautiful moments on our show. So we can pack in different shows to prepare for them in the week.
Yeah.
And Bambos clicked on the wrong show and went live with it. So we were speaking to another subject that wasn't the one. And so the guest was saying, "Hey, where are you guys?" And so now hopefully we'll find her. But we got to do our introduction now because we have to do it again.
Yeah.
We're going to have Alyssa De Rose, and we're going to discuss her book, Memoir, New Mom's Journey to Embrace Her Not-So-Perfect Motherhood. And where we're going to do that, Bambos?
And obviously on A Wonderful Chaos.
Yes, it is.
So take two.
Take two. We're going to do the same introduction we just did 10 seconds ago.
So I said we're going to explore the dark side of the moon.
Did you?
I love this. This is
This is it. I like how we find these random images to match in some ways the topics we have on each day.
Actually, it was more for me. I like Star Wars.
Do you?
Yeah, I love Star Wars.
Compared to Star Trek, you like if you could have the two, which would you choose?
Star Wars.
You choose Star Wars over
I would
Star
choose
Trek.
Star Wars, yeah.
Okay, that's fascinating.
Darth Vader and the stormtroopers.
Okay, but how about the intellect? Star Trek has.
I don't have any intellect.
Some depth to it, a little bit at least. No. Okay, or maybe not.
It's about the Force.
Yes.
It's very spiritual. No intellect.
It's about the Force. You like Force, obviously.
So Andy, tell us, why are you not a parent yet? Besides adopting.
Why am I not a parent?
Yeah.
I never had a big urge for parenthood in my life. I remember once I was feeling very lonely in life, and I quickly found this girlfriend, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna have a family. And I saw this I was feeling this really deep hole in my soul. And finally I started to like fill the hole from within, and then I had less desire to have a child. So yeah, and Ronnie and I have said, hey, our gift to the planet is not having children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also you guys really
because no one would want a child that came from me. What were you saying?
Well, what I love about you guys as a relationship, you didn't like. I can imagine the dynamics would have shifted if you have kids.
Possibly, yeah.
Like it's you guys are still playful. You're still having sex after all these years.
You like to shower affection on one another.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, Ronnie and I were together, and we were on the moped, driving to do some random things today. And she said, "Isn't it incredible? Like with COVID, we get to spend all this time together. Like, isn't this great?" And I was like thinking, yeah, it is really, really great. So yeah, we're in a luxury position that we get the joy of being together.
Yeah.
Right.
As opposed to getting a divorce.
Yeah, which I'm sure there will be a lot of after this whole period is done, or maybe during the period itself. This is our second go at a show with Alyssa. We had her for another show, and she booked us on a day that was a U.S. holiday. So she said, Andy, can we rebook? And I said, obviously.
Yeah. And it's also a show this week seems to be
the theme
of parenthood.
Yeah.
And kids.
And finding your birth mom when you're 40. So there's a lot of that going on this week. I love how themes emerge.
Yeah, but it's complete coincidence.
It always is a complete coincidence, but somehow not.
So we're going to rumble on, or shall we just talk about Alyssa now?
We shall talk about Alyssa. Alyssa and I think I mentioned on the other episode that we cut out, her and I both have Kohler Books as our publisher. And when I was looking at guests that I thought would be interesting, I thought, how cool is it to look at the other side of motherhood? Because, everyone's always talking about how beautiful. And I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard, unless you had a child, Andy, you can't understand. If you've never had a baby, you can't understand. And
I love how you do the voice imitation. Who is that person?
I've seen 5 of those people. There's 5 of them in my life. Usually from my mom's side of the family, because there's a lot of Catholic stuff going on there. So they have a certain idea of that you should propagate and have kids and that kind of thing. So I thought it was really sweet to talk to Alyssa a little bit about how it feels. She's got 2 boys. My mom had 3 boys. So I don't even want to think about what she had to go through to deal with that. But with Alyssa, just to discuss a little bit of the side of, what brought her to write this book to begin with.
Yeah.
And how is it like to have people tell you you should be really happy to have these kids and to think to yourself, Jesus, can I just get a break? like that would be like the fun, or life before and after. Like, I'd love to hear that. Like, what are the things that you no longer do and that you miss, that kind of stuff. So that was what I thought would be really cool to talk to Alyssa about.
Yeah, I can imagine it can be a bit of a taboo to actually say out loud, oh, wow, I don't know if this is even true. I'm projecting, but hey, I wish I didn't have kids.
Yeah, that as well, right?
And then your kids might watch that YouTube
channel 20 years later.
And traumatize them. And they will never, ever daddy and mommy issues for the rest of their life.
Seek psychiatric help because they're so mom never loved me.
And these 2 old guys on the show were laughing about it.
No, but I think this is the thing that in life, and I'm sure Alyssa will get into this, is that we have, we talk about expectations a lot on this show. And as soon as one expectation exists and you don't have that fulfilled in the reality, all of a sudden there's this big discrepancy. And I think, a part of my life is celebrating the discrepancy, i.e. and it's fucking great group on Facebook. So for those that haven't joined or seen it, it's just celebrating the thing that's hardest for you to embrace in yourself. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. And I think
I had a haircut and it's fucking great.
Or I had a bad haircut as far as you're concerned. So let's bring Alyssa on. I think it's
the one.
Yeah.
Hello. Good morning.
Hello. Very nice to see you.
Likewise. Speaking of our reschedule, the problem with national holidays is that, daycare is closed. So then I'm mom. That was the main impetus for needing a reschedule, is that, childcare unavailable means you're momming all day.
Yeah. See, those are the things. So if you could have had the daycare, then you would have been able to do the show. Is that what I'm hearing?
Most likely, yeah. It wasn't an exciting holiday, was it?
No.
I don't remember what it was. Columbus Day or something like that.
It was one of those days that you would never remember if it wasn't on the calendar. That kind of.
Exactly. Or unless you get the reminder email that preschool is closed. So
yeah.
That was what we were up against.
And we have, as we discussed a little bit prior to the show, Bambos and I, a lot of times a guest won't even show up. And for us, that just gives us more time to talk.
We just talk.
So we're not all that concerned if someone does it on shows. You don't have to feel any, not that you did, but nor would you have to.
I mean, we found the theme. Was it the time we did silence?
I think it might have been. I think when you didn't show up, we said, let's just turn this into a show about silence. And we looked at the camera for an hour and didn't say a word. That was kind of
like a staring contest. Yeah. I got
it. Bambos will always win, though.
Yeah.
So help us understand. It's curious because of all the books to write, why that book? Because in some level, as far as I know of you, you're not a counselor or a coach or a mentor. So typically, typically somebody who's trying to sell you something afterwards would write a book to help them sell the other thing. So what is it that compelled you to write this book?
Well, I loved in your introduction, you were talking about like the regret piece about parenthood. And I'd like to underscore, in case my children ever find this in the internet archives, I would never not choose to be their mom. The one big difference is I wish I would have had a clear picture of what it might cost me and what we would have been getting ourselves into. And, I think the cool thing about parenting is that usually the good and the bad have, different seasons, if you will. And overall, you hope that they balance one another out. But when I became a mom, I really, really struggled with the transition. And I turned to, books and things. And I felt like everybody was just saying, it's supposed to be beautiful. And I was looking around me on Instagram and Facebook, and everyone was living their perfect little motherhood lives. And I was like in a deep depression trying to make, sense of that. So I wrote a book kind of from the ashes, wanting other moms to know it's okay to not be okay.
Beautiful. But would you call that, because I've often, of course, heard the word postpartum depression, would that have been what you feel like you had experienced, or was it different than that?
Both. I think I had a delayed, true diagnosis, of postpartum depression. I had never experienced depression before that, so I didn't know what was happening to me. I think a lot of women disguise that depression as being a failure, or, oh, I'm just not good at this. At least that's how it manifested for me. So yes, that was at play. But even after that was worked out with, a little big pharma help and counseling and all of that, I think it was still a right sizing of expectations and sacrifice. I mean, that's really the core of parenting, is that you no longer get to make every decision around your own needs and desires. You have these human beings to take care of. And so maybe I'm selfish, but I really found that transition challenging. And you were talking about your great relationship with your wife. I mean, talk about something that flips your whole marriage on its head. And, so I felt like we were in these uncharted waters, and I wrote the book for other women to know that could be a normal experience.
Wow. I've often joked with my wife, because we often talk about getting a dog. And I always say, you do know if I get a dog that I'll probably love that dog more than you, and won't get the attention that you desire.
And more than me, and I'll get jealous.
and then we'll have that few moments where she'll reconsider.
Yeah. Well, and everyone's getting a dog right now. It's there's a shortage of dogs. The pandemic is making everyone think what a great time to have a dog.
Dogs and bicycles, actually, race bikes.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Alyssa, I really felt curious when you said you got into the pregnancy, into having family, and you didn't know what you said yes to. So what was your discovery?
Yes. Well, first, this is the most selfish thing that rises to the top when I think about it, but I am an athlete. I've been an athlete my whole life. And I was competing in CrossFit competitions before having a baby. I was coaching CrossFit 8 months pregnant. And after I had a delivery, I tore my abs open. I couldn't do the things that I had done for years. And so for me, the cost to my physical well-being was really challenging to navigate. I'm still dealing with talk about overshare, but I had a bladder prolapse after my second son. That's going to be impacting my life for a long time, or I have to have a surgery. So that for me was the thing that I didn't know I was saying yes to. I figured I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm fit. And, pregnancy doesn't, take it can take all prisoners, I suppose. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, I need sleep, and I didn't realize how much I needed it. And when you have both my kids suck at sleeping, and I just became a raging bitch. I was tired. I mean, those two things were the things I wasn't really. People say oh, you give up your body, or you're going to be tired, but those were really hard.
How is it? Sorry, we can go segue back. As you spoke, I had this moment, how does it feel to be with that mom who totally doesn't have any of the concerns you do, and just sort of plays to the, oh my God, it must be so incredible to have your kids, and just kind of not at all touching on how burdensome it also is.
Well, and I think that's reality, right? There are women who I feel step into motherhood as, an answer to an inner calling that they have. And it is a natural process. Maybe they didn't throw up for 9 months. Maybe their kids sleep through the night at 4 weeks old. And maybe they feel very fulfilled by, caring for another person. I had a big corporate career that I suddenly gave up because I thought I should be at home. And I floundered. I'm well, where's my purpose? And so for me, it was about finding other women that felt similarly, and that takes effort. And so, when you show up vulnerable, people tend to meet you there. And then when you start actually talking honestly, people will be oh wait, yeah, this sucks for me too.
Yeah.
And some of them really do. There are women who genuinely don't have the same struggles as me, but they have it in another way, you know?
But I mean, if you look at your life, I mean, because as you speak, we're painting, of course, a picture on this side. So you're a corporate woman doing CrossFit, coaching others
with six-pack.
With a six-pack. And then
not quite, but it was decent before babies.
So basically that is you. And then you, is the baby a decision, or is it like, okay, we're together and this happened? Like, how did that come about even?
Definitely a decision. I come from happily married parents. I have two siblings, two sisters, and I always wanted to have kids. That desire was always there, and it didn't get squashed. Now, I married a man who has 6 siblings. So he's one of 7. Talk about the Catholic background. But happily married parents, like they all love each other miraculously. And so both of us had a vision for kids. Like you go to a DeRose family function and their children like draped on every open surface. Like that just felt like that was an extension of who we'd be as a married couple. But, you know, talk about somebody who made it look easy. My mother-in-law, you know, like 7 kids with a smile on her face. So I think that vision was always there. But, you know, I had my first son at 31 and for some people that's old. For me, I felt like it was young. I don't know.
Yeah. But that's what I think is so weird on one level is that you have the corporate career and you have this sort of life that's very energetic and in some weird way, and it sort of feels a bit fucked up from my side. By the way, cussing is okay or no? I mean, it's make
have
sure.
At it. Have at it. I'm married to a trader, so I'm used to the swear words.
So how does it then? It sort of sucks, if I can put it like that, so that all of a sudden you become the person that's now taking care of the kids, no corporate job. Your fitness is basically waking up at 6 a.m. to take, like, how does that, like, that's got to screw with your mental state, like, as you mentioned 100%. Earlier.
Yeah, it really did. And on top of that, I'm in the northern suburbs of Chicago now, but I had my first child in the city. We lived in a condo, in a high rise. So I'd go to the park with my stroller and be surrounded mainly by nannies, because a lot of women, went back to work and I didn't. And so I think that transition was this expectation. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My mother-in-law was a stay-at-home mom. This is what you do. And we never even had a formal conversation about it, my husband and I. It was just like, oh, like, you're going to be at home. It sounds ridiculous because it wasn't like he put that on me. It was just a shared vision of what would happen. But his life didn't change. And so it was just a very lonely time. And I spent a couple years, really unpacking the cage I had built for myself. And the book I wrote is really about that, being like, this is just because I made this cage. No one told me I had to be home. No one told me that I had to do motherhood in this way. And so when I started to open it up and, make it my motherhood, I'm really happy. I'm a fulfilled parent. I have full-time childcare. I'm back in corporate life. And I've made with my husband's support every step of the way. Like, I've made choices. So when I take my work hat off and I show up with my mom hat on at 4:00 every day, I'm ready to be present with my kids in a way that I wasn't before. So, but that's just my version. And comparison's a killer of joy, as we all know.
Yeah, so. I love that in a way, I think that there's like 2 journeys we'll often take in our lives. The one is the unconscious reaction without even knowing that it's happening. Yeah. So when you said, hey, I'm just supposed to be a mom because that's what everyone else is supposed to have been. And then this moment where I find that's the moment where if you see you're not happy and then you start changing your life in order to align it with whatever feels better, like that's like when you create your own life. And it sounds quite sweet that you actually began to recreate the life you wanted after things settled a bit.
Yeah, but that's hard, right? I mean, change is hard and it's risky. And there's, that was and I wanted to find the right job, right? If I was going to go back to work, that I would still get to do both. My old life, I would have been traveling a lot and not, it would have been hard transition for our family. So yeah, I love what you were just saying, like that decisive moment of choosing, building your life around the structure that's going to bring you happiness.
But what were the belief? Because like in any journey, we all are hung up on something that we have a hard time making peace with. So for you to go back into, what were the things that you'd say were the hardest to make peace within yourself, and in order for you to sort of continue back into whatever your life is going to be going forward after the kids?
Yeah, I think two main themes come to mind. One, especially for women who are choosing to be at home, like a mentor of mine said, like, your work is holy work too. Like, even though like you're wiping butts and like cleaning dishes, like that's holy work. You're shaping it seems meaningless and thankless, but it is valuable. So like finding value in whatever it is you're doing in the moment. So that's one theme. But then for me, allowing myself to have a different definition of being a good mom. So there isn't just one way to be a good mom. And I had to accept that like me being a good mom could mean that I'm working 40 hours a week. But I'm still providing for my children. I'm giving them a safe space. We're still like creating a home environment that they love and have great memories in. And it's just looking different than what my childhood looked like,
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to think. Those almost feel like meta level themes for any problem one might be dealing with in their lives.
Totally. I mean, right. I'm sure then it'll come up and it'll manifest. I'm sure haven't learned this just with one attempt. I'm sure it'll manifest in another way in my marriage or whatever. And hopefully I'll remember all of the things I wrote down in my own book. I'm like, I made myself a manual for my
So I'd like to slow down. I'd like to slow down a little bit because we're in 20 minutes and I noticed I get into this rhythm. And so I need to slow down so Bambos can find.
I was about to tap him on the leg
and figure out what questions he wants to ask, and I won't jump over.
Yeah, please.
Well, actually, for me, the question that came really strong as a vibration was, what's the name of your first child?
Micah.
So Micah is out and you're holding this little thing and you're like, what the fuck? Like, can you kind of give me a picture of what was happening in you while you were holding this little one?
I don't know if I would. That is a sacred moment, I will say. And at least for me, it was a sacred moment. And because labor is hard. So it's like you made it, like we're here. It's like a relief moment, but that was really cool. Because you like look at this person and you're like, wait, you look like me and you look like my husband. Like this is so like weird, next level cool. I think for me, the what the fuck part of it came like 3 weeks later, because you do have these like, at least my experience. I want to always preface that because we all have a different version. But the first couple weeks, like you're just like, you're not even mentally all there. Like you're just like in this daze. And when the dust settled, I remember I was sitting in this nursery. I like had breastfed my child. So like all he wanted was me. My husband's laying on the floor. I'm crying. I'm like, we're not old enough for this. No one told us this was going to be so hard. And he looked at me and goes, no. We are too old for this. He's like, we've had too much freedom. We spent, my husband's a year older than me. So like we had spent over a decade doing whatever we wanted. And so it was like this like stop of like, oh my gosh.
Isn't that interesting? Because the way when you say it that way, it's transitioning in a life to I don't have control of my life anymore.
Exactly.
Wow.
Like you actually don't have perception. Everyone will agree. Everyone has their own experience. So we don't want to like, but if I think about it, hey, do I want to go out Friday night? Hey, how am I feeling 5 minutes before 7? For you, it's like, okay, a week from now, we've got to decide, can we get the babysitter or can we get the this or?
My babysitter canceled on me today for Saturday. She's like 15 and lives down the street. So now I'm like, darn it. Like, now what? Like we wanted to go out with some friends. So now I'm like, who else can I text? Yeah, you're in a completely different reality.
Yeah.
Would you say you cherish that time more than you did before because now it's sacred? There's that you have to make the effort to even have it.
Yes, 100%. For sure. And my parents are really generous with their time. So they took our kids for a weekend 2 weeks ago, and my husband and I like looked at each other and we're like, well, what do we do? Like we dropped them at my parents, so we were just at our house, and it was kind of awkward. Like we were like, wait a second, it's just us. Let's go hiking. Let's go to brunch. But it was like, we just aren't used to it. So yeah, for sure.
Did you get any resistance from your parents or from your husband's parents?
Get any resistance in what way?
Oh, for example, from the moment that you might have gone a little bit into depression, I don't know what we called it.
Oh, yeah.
Or when you decide to go back to work.
Good question. So my mom and I are very close. And at the time, my parents lived out of state. And so my husband flew in my mom. Like, he was worried about me. And so she had come to stay when we first had the baby. So it was, the following few months or whatever, he flew my mom in. And they together sat me on the couch and said, we need you to take care of you. So as far as getting help with the depression piece of it, my mom played a really big role. And my mother-in-law, I think she's a wonderful, wonderful woman. And I'm grateful that I genuinely like her. But I think there was a little disconnect for her and me when talking about depression or going back to work, because it's neither of those things were her experiences.
Yeah.
She was supportive, but she never worked and she never was sad about it. So,
and I could imagine it just because if I extrapolate, make some projection, someone that's had that many children, that is her identity.
Totally.
So she's shaped who she is around having these children and raising them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
and she's done a great job. They're decent human beings and have gone on to have, a bunch of grandkids for her and stuff. But yeah, my parents were excited I was going back to work because I think they know who I am as a person and could see that there was probably a piece of me that had atrophied. So
what puzzles me is then you went for a second one. You're like, it was such a great experience.
Well,
how does that happen?
That might have been a surprise.
Okay.
A happy surprise in hindsight, but my second son is named Levi, and the meaning of Levi is joining, and we're Christians. And so I was very upset when I first found out. I was very scared. I wasn't sure we could handle it.
Yeah.
And I just felt like God told me that name. Levi had been on our list. My husband really wanted biblical names. So Levi had been on our name, and he was he's joining your family. I'm giving him to you. And he was an easier baby. He totally rounds out our family. I'm so glad Micah has a sibling. But there was also I was medicated. I was on Zoloft for that pregnancy. I'm still on it. And that gave me a leg up, for my mental well-being.
We don't know much. We're in the Netherlands, so we don't follow.
Oh.
It's so interesting. What I find curious, this is some of these differences in cultures. When I'm sitting at a table in the US, they'll be shouting out names, and everyone at the table apparently knows what's going on but me. Whenever it comes to any pharmaceutical. So when you'll say a pharmaceutical, you could name any pharmaceutical. We wouldn't know what it does or what the purpose of it is. So what is the purpose of this one you mentioned?
That's so true,
Zoloft
isn't it? Yeah.
Is a SSRI, so I'm probably going to butcher. It's a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. I think I'm saying that correctly. So it is for people who are depressed or anxious tend to not have as much serotonin, and so it's supposed to delay the reuptake of that. I'm not a medical person, but Zoloft is anti-anxiety, antidepressant. But it was one that you could take while pregnant. And so I chose to stay on it through my pregnancy, through my delivery, and I'm still on it because it's making my life easier. Yeah. And so that made my experiences between my two children night and day. And I really do think for me, it helped.
And you feel the difference. If you were to go a week or whatever without taking it, you could note.
I don't know. I haven't tried going off of it. I think if I was going to, I'm probably in a mental state now that it might be worth trying, but I'm also like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So it's just a little pill I take at night before bed. And it's, I'd be curious. At some point I might try to wean off of it, but I'm going to wait till I have a little more sleep, regular sleep before I do that.
So I hear you taking responsibility for the part of yourself that might be edgy.
Yeah, for
if
sure.
you haven't slept.
Yeah. I mean, and my mom has been on an SSRI for a long time, and there is some biological tendencies, they say. So why not give myself the best chance of happiness?
Were you happy to get 2 boys, or did you think you got screwed in that? Did you want a girl?
I cried in the ultrasound room when I found out it was a second boy.
You thought, why don't I get my princess?
I wept. I cried a little bit in the ultrasound room. Then I felt guilty and I needed to get it together. And then I came home that night and I wept. Dan was at grad school. Micah was sleeping, and I was like, I'm all alone. And I have 2 sisters, so I'm not used to having brothers or anything. But now I wouldn't trade it for anything. And, you know, being like an athletic girl or a tomboy, if you will, like having sons is really fun. They love each other most of the time. So
They're
it's
gonna
fun.
be closer to you.
Yeah, the boys are always loving the mom more than dad, you know.
I have to say, my older son is a mama's boy, and my little guy is a daddy's boy. He loves his dad. So we it's good. We can each take one. So
as you're talking
so
about,
we'll probably not have a girl because I think we're feeling like our family's complete. But
so, do you have a future plan for them? Do you already?
Do I have a future plan for what?
Do you have a future plan for them?
I had to think of dad's Andy's dad because.
Well, let's do some pre-coaching. The consistent story we've seen over and over again in our own lives and the lives of any guests on the show is that the mom or dad has certain expectations of the child,
like doing sports,
right? And those expectations go unmet, and then the child experiences it in some way, and then they come to someone like me or Bambos many years later for coaching services. That's sort of the pattern we've seen. So are there any expectations that you see that maybe you have that could be troublesome to your child?
So we can already make the contract for you.
Yes.
Yeah. It would be really hard for me if my kids didn't play sports.
Yeah.
They can choose which one they want, but my husband and I both played sports. We're very active. So I will celebrate whatever they want me to celebrate, but I have these, I'd love to be on the football sidelines. I just do. I want them to play team sports, soccer.
What if they both became band? They were in the band and they refused to pick up any athletic sport. They just were going to be band members.
I would be excited. I think I'd have to readjust my I can't. I'll be really honest. I can't even picture this because my kids already both play sports.
Oh yeah, I got it.
And love it. So
no, it's just funny because on one level, as much as we want to surrender that it's their lives, there's another part of all of us that say, God, wouldn't it be great if, I could vicariously do a lot of the things that I miss not doing myself and enjoy that through my children.
I know. And I'm sure I'm going to mess them up in plenty of ways. We'll have to see. They'll let you know in about 15 years.
Have you and your husband agreed to the talks about, sexuality yet? Have you come to your grips with how are we going to do that?
No, I think we're just putting our heads in the sand because our kids are still toddlers.
I got that. I just like to see how far in advance do you two look at each other and say,
I don't know. I mean, with kids these days, with access to phones and tablets and things, I'm hearing, we thankfully have some family members with kids who are teenagers that are doing a decent job of navigating those situations that will hopefully just be how do we do this? But I mean, kids are seeing things at an age where they shouldn't be seeing them. And so I think that it's going to force our hand to address it sooner than we'd want. I do think with, accessibility to porn and things like that, especially with boys, that'll be something we have to address.
Yeah. Are you taking any more stringent rules when it comes to screen time and that kind of stuff?
We are a big TV house, especially COVID. We've just like all the rules flew out the window. We don't do iPads or anything yet, but we do have Kindles we bought for a road trip that we'll bust out for like haircuts. They'll get my kids to stay still. We're lucky though, because we actually have a nanny now. And so she keeps them busy, not on screens. That's helpful. So yeah, we've kind of avoided it.
Did you get a nanny from overseas or is it a local?
It's a local nanny. You can't get a nanny overseas right now. It's kind of hard with
you mean
COVID.
au pairs?
Au pairs, yeah. Oh, is that right? You can't. Okay.
Yeah, like we looked at it. We were hoping to do COVID. We have friends with who are very happy with an au pair, but you can't with all the travel restrictions. It's really hard to do that right now.
Wow.
So we were lucky. We found a girl who was moving from out of state who was looking for a local job.
Beautiful.
So yeah, she lives nearby. She's like 23. She's great.
Yeah.
Like I still have like quite a few questions because I saw that we kind of went in deep and now we're fluffing around.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
What was the darkest moment on your journey? Because I want to take you back in there.
Yeah. What was
the darkest moment to the point where you thought, "Fuck, I want to end it."
Oh,
Did you have that?
I have that moment for sure. I was really struggling. Had a babysitter come watch Micah so that I could meet Dan for lunch downtown, like, his lunch break. And we had lunch and I was going home on my own on the Red Line. If you guys are familiar with Chicago, it's an underground train. And as the Red Line was coming, I was so depressed in that moment. And I actually thought like how easy it would be to step off the platform in front of a moving train. And it was terrified me. That thought terrified me. I'd never had a suicidal thought before that. And it felt like very, very real. And it was almost, for me, the script in my head was that they would be better off without me. And so that happened.
What was behind that?
I don't know. I think I just like months of feeling like and not getting better, and I hadn't sought professional help yet. And I think one thing for me, and I don't know if you guys talk to lots of people, but I didn't know this was depression. I know that sounds so silly because in hindsight, it's like red flag, red flag, red flag. It felt like failure for me.
Yeah.
Or that I was a bad person for not liking it,
I suck at this.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough.
Yes. Yeah.
Bambos and I were discussing this yesterday, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Bambos was talking about ending his life a few times. He's actually tried to commit suicide on a few occasions. It hasn't quite worked out for him.
I failed.
And we discussed it. And what the funny thing was, it matches what you just shared, was that he said, Andy, I feel like if I come to the end, it's so much easier. What was that? You used words like, I just to finish, just to not to be a burden in other people's lives.
Yes.
That was the wording that he used. And I laughed and I said, because I had so much experience with people who on the other side of the suicide had to deal with the unresolved pain that they had because they couldn't support that person. So I laughed and said, the irony is that the person kills themselves with the idea so they don't need to be a burden to another, when in fact they become this massive burden to all the people around them, because now those people feel the rest of their lives like they could have done something.
Right. And it's funny because, I mean, from a 30,000-foot view on the other side, I don't know, maybe almost like your experience, you don't think that way. For whatever reason, you feel like you are causing people pain, or for me, I'm like, they would have a better life. Like that was the narrative. And it seems so silly. And I'm sure my husband would say, absolutely, that isn't true. I hope anyway. But yeah, it was scary. And I'm thankful. And this is where I am very grateful. Like I had a healthy marriage. I had someone I knew I could trust. I had my mom. So I was able to admit and share, like, I had this thought today and it scared the shit out of me.
Wow.
And they were able to step in and say, it's time for you to go see like a professional.
So like that was the moment.
Yeah, that was the launching pad of the rest of my, pursuit of well-being, of mental health. But what happened for you?
Oh, I'm always in touch with that part of myself, actually. Like, sorry if any family members are watching this and you don't feel comfortable, but I can't deny that as much as I love an expression of life and I'm very passionate, I can also touch with the same depth how it is to just end it all and like be okay with that. Like enough at some point. So I wouldn't even say it's coming from depression. It's coming really from, like, sometimes I've just had it.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm sorry to hear that, because I think that has to be hard to balance those two emotions in conjunction all the time. It's a big burden to carry, I bet.
Well, I kind of have a theory, and maybe you can also correct or adjust or give me some mirroring, Andy. I think we're all prone to ending our lives, but the way society is structured, we kind of numb out the parts of ourselves that we don't want to look at. Like, if people have to choose between being with themselves and sitting in silence, I would say watch Netflix. I've been on Tinder and I took out all my dating apps today officially, and now I have to sit with that loneliness again. Oh, hello. I'm here.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I have found a lot of my own peace or solace with my personal faith story, and that feels really real at times, and sometimes it feels more of like something that you just say because you're supposed to. But I know for me, in my darker moments, that feels the most tangible. Do you have that? Now I'm interviewing you, but I'm just curious, like, is there a faith element that, or is there any like higher power that pulls you or gives you some purpose and meaning?
Like, I'll tell myself, well, if I'm gonna end it, I might as well fucking penetrate whatever project I'm busy with fully and maybe die doing that instead of just ending it by jumping out of a window.
But the question, I think, if I understand Alyssa's question, was she would often turn to say the higher being like God or spirit. And the question,
No,
I'm rephrasing it.
I can't say I do that. No.
Yeah, I was just curious because, maybe lean into that when you're having some of your time by yourself, and like start asking some questions about, if I do end my life, where am I going?
He's going to hell. I already know that.
Yeah, but like, you have to, if you believe hell is real, then heaven is real too, right? Those things go together.
That was my sarcasm. Sorry. We talked earlier.
Sarcasm, but press into that. I just, from one human being to another.
Thank you, Andy.
Press into it, Vamos.
I'm going to press into it.
That's my advice.
That's her advice.
Like, you could just throw it out the window, by the way.
I actually will.
No, what's interesting, let's touch this one for a moment, if we may, is that it's interesting that when one has faith, oftentimes there's a peace and a comfort that comes with that, which is also undeniable. So it isn't to speak positively or negatively. We have a viewer who's Bolalang. He's from South Africa. He watches every show. He has his own challenges with religion just because of where he is, and it's kind of a more indoctrinated. Sure. You're either in or out of the club, and if you're out, it's a problem. But the thing is that it's also undeniable that when one has a faith, they have an easier time making peace with things that others don't, because there is no faith. So that also is certainly something that at least I've noticed in myself in interacting with people. Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say after that?
Oh, I was actually going to change the subject.
Oh, nice.
Feel free. He's like, you're now making me uncomfortable.
No,
actually, not.
No, he has to get we have to get way uncomfortable with him to get him.
No, it's also because you wrote a book.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, when you published this book, did you get a lot of, like, what did you discover? I assume that you got women or even men emailing you for...
Yeah.
Did you become this guru kind of person?
I don't think guru is fair, but I do. I mean, first of all, it's a connecting practice. I'm pulling up my phone because I got a message from a girl I've known for years this morning, actually. And just basically affirming that she was appreciating me for saying like my deepest, darkest thoughts. And she's like, I wouldn't have put this on paper. And so it's twofold. It's like, it's a connecting thing because people come out of the woodwork that are supportive of you that you haven't talked to since high school. And that's kind of fun. But then also like, I'm hearing women say, you put on paper what I've been feeling. Thank you. And so I'm sure there are others who are like, you're off your rocker. This was offensive. I mean, I talk about my faith in my book. And so I know that's not everyone's cup of tea. So I'm sure there are going to be plenty of people who are like, ugh, waste of money. But for just being able to touch a couple women and make them feel less alone, that was really the heart behind it.
So did you get a lot of reviews?
More reviews than I was expecting. I know, Andy, you kind of have to like hustle for reviews, right?
Oh,
like,
it's the worst.
It feels like just so uncomfortable.
It's the worst.
I hustle.
But yeah, I did get more reviews than I was expecting, so that was cool.
Yeah. So when a woman will come to you with an issue, do you tend to give advice or do you just hold space? It sounds like you're a wounded healer, also like Andy.
I love the term wounded healer, by the way. And I think it depends. I think when it comes to specifically to mental health, I will give advice because I think that's really important. And the advice isn't like do what I do, but it's go see a professional because, you know, there's a reason those issues are like mandated reporting. Like I just know that like at some point people need to make a decision for that well-being. But as far as the rest of it goes, I don't know. I'm an opinionated person, so I probably talk too quickly in most situations, but I like to think I hold space. It's kind of a yes and answer.
But I mean, have you gotten, because in a way you become a de facto authority, right? Just by having written a book, regardless if you know or understand the topic at all, it's like, oh, this is someone we can speak to. So have you found that you've been in environments where you've had to speak as not necessarily that you felt that way, but people kind of expected that from you?
You know, my book came out in the middle of a pandemic, so I don't know that I've been challenged in that way yet. But I am pretty active on Instagram. It's probably like the one place I like put things out there. And so I do get a lot of inbox questions about postpartum depression because I've tagged it and people will say like, what should I do? That's the only time where I've been like, am I the right person to be talking about this? I'm not so sure, but this is what worked for me. So,
but based on where you are right now, this moment, it sounds like you've become one of those women who love children. Like it's the best.
Yeah. Have you become that woman or not?
I love people and people start as children. I love moments with I love my children. They're great. I'm not the person that's on the floor, like initiating play, like, but I've learned to find joy in like those reverent moments with my kids. That like, you do have these moments where like, you really do sit back and you're like, I created this person. Like, that's pretty cool. And so I just feel privileged to like be invited into those moments with my kids. But no, like know thyself. Like we're having a Halloween party on Sunday and all my stay-at-home mom friends are coming with their kids and they've all planned all of these games and stuff. And you know what I'm bringing? White Claws and ordering Dominoes. Like, know your role, you know?
High five.
I'm like, I'm ordering Dominoes and I will have alcohol. So.
I think like that's sort of that in life, it's just so, as you speak, it kind of dawns on me that if you embrace whatever you are, then actually you just made peace and you become a better mom anyways. So if the kids, even if you're not doing the things that other moms might do, but you're just happy with who you are and that pervades the environment, like that'll be more valuable to the children than having someone totally judging themselves for not being a good enough mom.
Yeah. Happy people have happy homes, you know? And so that's kind of my manifesto is like, I want to have a happy home. I want my kids to look back and be like, my parents were happy people. I want my husband to feel fulfilled. I want my kids to feel fulfilled. I want to feel fulfilled. And that's just going to, you know, required change from how we started.
It was interesting because my mom, she was the oldest of, I think it was 12 or 13 kids. It was, get that through your skull. I don't know, it was 12 or 13. I guess get confused if she was the 13th or the 12th. Or they were on a farm in Omaha. Yeah.
That's incredible. Carroll,
Iowa.
Wow.
Yeah.
The Shaliffs.
No, not the Shaliffs, because she was a Neary then. Remember the Nearys are the Irish, right. And the Irish have sex because of all that thing. So she was the oldest of the 12 or 13. And when she had 3 kids, it was the third.
One of 3 boys, right?
I was the third. Also an accident on the back end. And what was fascinating is that when I got old enough and graduated, she basically lost the thing that gave her life meaning, in the sense that she was the oldest of all those kids. So she raised a lot of those kids when they were on the farm. Then she raised the 3 of us. And then she had to decide, what am I going to do from this moment forward? And what she did is she got the marriage annulled to my dad, because she said my dad was Jewish and she was Catholic. She got married because she got pregnant by accident. Okay. So she said the marriage was under false pretense, and she went to the church and said, I'm going to get the marriage annulled, as if, so then I would have been a bastard, I guess. I don't know what the thing is, but
bastard,
which I am anyways. But then she wanted to become a nun.
What?
Yeah, she wanted to live a life of service, because in a way, that was what she learned. She learned to live in service of the family. Then she learned to live in service of her kids. And now the kids left the house. And in a beautiful way, which I thought was one of the most beautiful acts that I could imagine, was that I never felt guilty that I needed to fulfill anything in her life. Like she was that, like the Sting song, if you love someone, set them free. Like I always felt that you've been set free, and now I'm going to do what I need to do to satisfy my own life. And so she actually was planning to become a nun.
And did she become a nun?
She actually died before that happened, but that was the plan.
Crazy.
It is crazy.
Similarly, well, not so similarly, my mom, when my youngest sister was in high school and I was in college, she went back to school and became a teacher. So that when Katie left the house, now she's been teaching kindergarten for 12 or 13 years. But like that second definition of service or being with kids also was her story. But less dramatic. Didn't annul the marriage, but that's a wild story.
Yeah. And I just thought it was interesting because as you were speaking, somehow the thought of how it is to basically not live your life dependent on however you think you should be as a mother. And I believe that that's kind of a theme that I've seen cross over all mothers, because I'll do a lot of my coaching work, and the thing that will come up often is because I'm having people embrace the thing they resist most. And one of the hardest things I find to have a mother say is, I'm a shitty mother and it's okay.
Yeah.
Because there's so much idea that they can't say okay to that because that is not acceptable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's on the back of my book, but it was the most powerful thing that I've heard since becoming a mom was when my therapist, who had known me for 7 years, said, it's okay if becoming a mom was both the best and worst thing to ever happen to you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. So it can be both. It can be both amazing to have kids and be miserable to have kids. And those can live together, to your point.
Yeah.
So
what do you? Oh, sorry.
I want to share something.
Please.
Like we had what was the episode yesterday?
Yesterday's episode was what was yesterday's episode? It feels like a year ago.
It had to do also with parenting.
Yeah, it was parenting. But what was this? Who was on yesterday?
Fuck.
My God.
Was it finding his birth mother?
No, that's on Friday. You know better than we do.
Well, you mentioned it. I was I want to hear that story.
Yesterday, I have a daughter that I'm not allowed to see.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And I have sat the last 6 years of not seeing my little one, feeling I haven't been deserving of her. And based on yesterday's show and today's show, I just realized as a father, I didn't show up as to how I was expected to show up, but I was showing up in my own way, and that way wasn't good enough.
By whose standards?
Yeah, the mothers,
The mom.
So we actually got pregnant 2 months after knowing each other, and she wasn't the woman I felt I wanted to have in my life. Great woman. I loved her as a person, but not as someone I want to be intimate with.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was incapable at that moment, coming also from a trashed up childhood, I decided to be the thing that my father wasn't. And I stayed in the relationship for 4 years, trying to make it work. And the whole time I was an imposter. So when I stepped out of the relationship, it was a shock. And I kind of got, okay, you didn't want this anyway, so you're out. And I have to say that there's never a day that I don't think about her or I don't feel love for her. And I'm just sitting here listening to you and how you've lived it. And I'm like, oh, I've never really celebrated actually that I have showed up in my way and it just wasn't acknowledged. Up until yesterday, I've always felt that I've been a shit father.
Wow, that's powerful. I mean,
so these two shows pretty much have given me, well, probably some peace.
I'm so glad. I think there's one thing, like, your child is your child is your child, and your daughter is yours. And so,
well, I would say the way I made peace with it, well, I had to make peace with it at some point. Andy said to me, you do not own her. You do not own your child. Like, when she's there, and when she's not there, she's not there. Like, that's how you need to live it, so you don't get lost in the stories. And that's how that was the tool I used up until now. So yeah.
Are you feeling prompted to change how you engage there?
Well, up until last year, I sent messages every now and again. I would say a few times a year, not a lot. Again, but I always felt that I'm intruding, and there was never really a response which says, hey, let's meet. And even if I would be like, hey, listen, I'd love to see her. If there's space, I'd love to pass by. But there was never a full yes. So I just told myself at some point she will look for me. And she has two choices. Either there's space to talk and explore, take responsibility for whatever and begin anew, or I'm the bad person and she'll have to go on a journey in her life to discover what she needs to discover through that story.
Yeah.
How old is she now?
10.
10. Yeah. Well, I think what would be, I don't know. I'm one mom, but the one thing that is most powerful is just words. So sending messages, even if they go unresponded to, then if she gets to an age where she wants to make a choice for the relationship, she has a foundation. Because what happens when you have a toxic co-parenting relationship is you've got a mom who's telling her things that aren't true about you. And so your job is to make sure that your daughter has access to the truth about who you are.
I would say, I wouldn't say the mother's experience is not true. It's not complete.
So it's not true.
Fair. But it's not true of who you are today and how you're living your life today. And so I shouldn't be, here you go. You asked me if I give people advice. Apparently I do.
Yeah, you do.
And it was good advice, actually. I can tell you it was good because it triggered him to defend. So
yeah. Well, anyway, if you can completely ignore it, but I would want your daughter to have access to who you are.
No, I mean, our story yesterday was about divorce. A woman's kids divorced her. So it was really fascinating story.
Like, what's that called? Is that called divorce when you
well, it was that was the term. We were surprised in the end, but she explained that in the end, the children went to court to divorce their mom. So basically,
how old were they?
15 and 10.
Oh yeah, wow.
Young, and it was very toxic. And she explained the toxicity of it all and that kind of thing. So it was very much in line with the kind of thing you were just discussing. So as you were talking, what I thought was interesting was that, and it was it was often what I heard as a child myself, is my dad would often rage against my mom because he would say, your mom is poisoning our relationship. So little did he know that, like, I was doing saying everything horrible to her, and she was the one always saying, your dad's a great guy.
Right.
He didn't know that she was the one, like, pushing me back in the ring. If I was a boxer, I'd be getting knocked out, and she'd be like, come in for the next round.
Just relationships are so hard, and everyone has brokenness. And so anyway, thank you for sharing. I hope I wasn't offensive in my prescription.
You were very offensive.
No, I wish you would have gone for the jugular.
No, that was really a joke. I really appreciate.
So how do you feel? How did you feel when she said it to you? So she's just to recap, because we sometimes go over if there's little topics we'd like to.
You're fine.
Continue. So, like, how would you feel if you said, even if? And not this is, I don't want to say you should do this. I'm actually.
What she said made sense to me.
It did make sense to you. Yeah. Okay. And so that would mean for a birthday, you might send a message where you hadn't done that in the like recent past.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we had a show when it was her birthday, and I sent a message in that moment. Remember?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well,
but kind of what you shared kind of actually reminds me to just send a message without having any attachments to it. Yeah. So thank you.
Well, I'm a praying person, so I'll just be praying for some healing there.
Yeah.
If you'll allow me.
Of course. You and Bulelang.
Yes. We have Bolalang, who said earlier on the show. Bolalang mentions
he's our guest. He's been on our show also, but he's one of our
he's like a co-host for the show because he's always here and sharing messages.
So cool.
The issue of children is personal. I love children so much. I, however, understand that not everyone has this feeling. Yes. And we have JC Barnett, who's from Tennessee. He's in Gallatin, Tennessee today. He often chimes in and shares where he's at or what he's doing. He often says when he watches our show, confused, and it's okay. It's always a beautiful. I'm at peace with. He actually told me he was in a meeting because he works with school boards and swim instructors and stuff, and they called on him at some point in the meeting because it was all very, very theoretical. Nothing was really being decided upon, and then he said, Andy, what I said was, I'm at peace with my confusion. So that's how he responded in the meeting.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So thank you for being with us.
Yeah. Thank you for including me and just inviting me into the conversation. I love going deep. So I'm kind of glad we did.
Yeah.
Today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just as a quick side, will there be any further books or the book is called Memoir. So if anyone is looking for
Memoir. Yeah,
well, the second book is. I was thinking the second book is like it's amazing being a mom.
Maybe I don't know. I don't have a good idea for one, and I don't have a lot of space in my life right now to write. And so I'm enjoying. This had been a lifelong, like I always wanted to write a book, and now I can check that box. So beautiful. For now, no.
Well, actually, the title that I thought now is.
What about you?
It's great being a mom, and I have no idea.
Yeah. There you go.
Or bluffing
what
your way
through
You're talking
about, and it's fucking great.
Yeah. I have no idea what I'm doing, and it's fucking great. That's what I do every day. Love you. We'll talk to you. Yes.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
So, Dad.
That's beautiful, Bambos. We've had some really good like healing shows here. It's nice.
Very healing.
Yeah, it's really good. We have some more shows coming up, right?
Tomorrow, The Discipline of Joy with Jennifer Ann.
Jennifer Ann says, you don't get joy if you don't discipline yourself around it. I think she's got a point.
And she's one of the happiest people I know.
That's nice. And we're going to talk to Kevin Kopchak on Friday. We're going to talk about him about meeting his birth mom after 40 years, which I think, not only does he meet the mom, but the brothers that he would have had if they had been raised, like the whole dynamic. It's just, it's really going to be interesting to talk to him.
And Andy, we're going to do that on
A Wonderful Chaos.